Are 9 games on the horizon? We'll discuss.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Shout out to all the everydayers out there subscribing to Locked On Sooners wherever they get your podcasts. We're here to cover your favorite team every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. This is Jay Smith. You can follow him on Twitter at Unfair Sports. And we got some schedule updates happening. The Georgia Bulldogs had a home-and-home schedule with the UCLA Bruins for 2025 and 2026. Well, that got canceled and replaced, for the Bruins at least, with a home-and-home with Utah. Now, speculation has arisen that this might mean, starting in 2026, that the SEC is heading to 9 games. If we remember, when they laid out the 8-game conference schedule for 2024 and 2025, that's basically all that they were willing to commit to at the time, because Greg Sankey and a number of other people have been an advocate for more SEC games. And when I say a number of other people, I'm going to say ESPN, the Disney Network, everybody else that wants to get more SEC games on their family of networks. So, Jay, do you think that that's what is going to happen? We're going to get an announcement maybe at SEC Media Days?
I'm thinking that the opening statement is going to be, we're moving to a 9-game league, because it only makes sense, right? We knew that the 24 and the 25 seasons were put together specifically, that's why they mirror each other, just because they wanted to just get things started, and they needed to have a game plan with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, right? And from there, the conversation has been 9 games. Like you said, ESPN, the networks, ABC, Disney has been wanting a 9-game schedule out of them, similar to because the Big Ten already does this. And so they've been wanting that for a bit, and now is the true opportunity to get it done. I'm sensing that the minute that Sankey gets up there to do the keynote at SEC Media Days, that basically they're going to say, we're going to 9 games, woo, and we'll see just how happy everybody is about that. But it only makes sense. And now I guess from there, the only thing that sucks is it'll be very minimal when it comes to the cross-conference games. Because one rule the SEC did have was you had to have at least 1 game on your schedule that was from one of the Power 5 conferences, right? It had to be Big 12, ACC, Big 10, or Pac-12. It had to be one of those 4. You had to have that as far as your non-con. You had to have one of those games there. And so now that kind of eliminates that need, because technically you're playing a tougher schedule in theory, being in conference. But I'm wondering if they still add that and get people to go ahead and say, no, you got to have only 2 cupcake games. You have to have 1 game non-con that is not that is from one of the power conferences.
It would make sense to have some kind of scheduling agreement, whether it's the SEC and the ACC, because it's very regional, and the the Pac-12. I'm always going to forget to eliminate the Pac-12 from my vocabulary. I wonder how many years it'll take. The Big 12 and the Big 10, because again, very regional. If we'll see some scheduling alliances kind of like that. I mean, we're seeing UCLA and Utah get together a home and home. It wouldn't surprise me to see Oklahoma add an ACC team down the road if the ACC teams stick together. Maybe a Virginia Tech. How great would it be to go into Blacksburg? That'd be kind of fun, right? Now,
absolutely.
If they go to 9 SEC games, you're right in that, okay, you're playing that power non-conference game, but now it's a conference game. So the SEC may not be as strict about that moving forward, but it would be nice to kind of keep some semblance of that, because, hey, even though it's just Houston, I say just Houston, that's a more intriguing matchup than, say, playing Temple.
Right.
playing
Purdue,
Miami of Ohio, playing some random Sun Belt team, even if it's just a lesser than, productive Big 12 program. I'd rather see that on the schedule than see Temple. And that's no shot at Temple, but that's just the hierarchy of college football and where we stand.
No, and that's a fair point, because that's the one big complaint people have with, the SEC is they've always got that one cupcake game before the major game, right? Alabama always plays Mercer like the week before they go up against Auburn. For us, we have Maine before we play against Alabama. So we're officially SEC ready because we have an SEC schedule with the team that's, probably going to get throttled by us, right? And so people want to see more competitive games constantly, but at the same time, at what cost, right? What cost do we have when it comes to the players' bodies and everything? Because, the higher the competition and the more quality you play, there's going to be the more injuries, right? There's more chance for things like that. And so with that cancellation, I guess, John, what does it mean for us? Like, if that happens, does that mean that we can't do the Michigan game in 2025? Does that throw that out the window?
Man, I would be very disappointed to see that loss, just because it's a big time matchup and you only get those every so often. Now, with the expanded playoff, you're going to get more big time matchups and more big time matchups that mean something beyond the exhibition bowl season that we've had in years past. But still, getting to play Michigan, coming off of a national title, I know no Jim Harbaugh, you got Sharon Moore. That's going to be an intriguing matchup. It's going to be one that moves the needle. It's going to get everybody excited. It's going to be a national broadcast. It's going to get the national studio shows in town for that game. It wouldn't surprise me to see them drop it, because, is the Big Ten going to want to do the SEC any favors and vice versa on the broadcast front moving forward? Probably not. If there's any bigger rivalry in sports right now, it might be Fox and ESPN doing battle with one another for broadcast rights and media rights packages and media window or broadcast windows and things like that. So it wouldn't surprise me, but man, it would be a bummer, I think, to lose that game in the non-conference, because those non-conference matchups are what you dream about when you're trying to look at, okay, who could you add in as a power team as a part of your big time schedule that gives you that big strength of schedule.
Yeah, and I looked at theirs. So they're playing Texas this coming season. Michigan is, and then they don't go to Texas because Texas comes to them this season, but they don't go to Texas until like 2027. So they kind of kick that can down the aisle, which makes sense. And so when I looked at what Michigan has available, if we decide to keep 2025, we would have to kick our return game where we go to Ann Arbor down the line to like 2028, because so far Michigan has nothing scheduled there, and we have an opening in 2028 because we only have 2 games scheduled so far. So I'm hoping that they decide to do that instead of just flat out canceling like UCLA and Georgia did, because I do want to get up there to the Big House for a game, especially as a Sooner fan. I want to be up there and go and check it out. It's definitely on my bucket list of places. I still have the big game between Ohio State and Michigan as a bucket list game for me to go to. But I feel like if the best route to go is to kick that game down from 26, move it to, a spot where both teams have an opening, which will be 28. Kind of sucks that we have to wait another 4 years or 3 years from the time we play. But that's common. That happens, right? The other one, though, we better not get rid of the Nebraska games. Those got to stay. We need to keep that. If anything, if we do a non-con and we have like a consistent one, can we just do Nebraska every year? I mean, I know some people would like Oklahoma State to bring that rivalry back, but personally, I'd rather have Nebraska.
I'm down with it. If you got to tell me I can only have one of my historical rivals as a permanent non-conference game, yeah, give me Nebraska. That'd be so much fun every single year to renew that Big 8, Big 12 rivalry that they've had for so long. Again,
give me that red on red violence.
Yeah, a blue blood versus a blue blood. What could go wrong, or what could go exactly right? Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of a couple, or at least one blue blood, there's a lot of rumors out there right now about ACC collapse, more realignment, but our Florida State and Clemson making a huge mistake? We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. And hey, now is the time to make every moment more. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. If you're still wanting to get in on that 7.5 win total for the Oklahoma Sooners, which again looks really juicy if you're wanting to lay a little money on those win totals, 7.5 looks like a gift right now from the FanDuel gods. So go check it out, FanDuel.com. Again, to make every moment more, visit FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching ESPN or Fox Sports on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And again, shout out to all the everydayers out there making Locked On Sooners their first listen every single day. For your second listen of the day, go check out my guys, Marcus Mosher, Landon McCool, and everything that they have to say about the Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb contracts over there on Locked On Cowboys. For me, that is one of my first listens every single day. So go check out Locked On Cowboys. But Florida State, Clemson, according to a story and really some comments that Ross Dellinger made at Big 12 Media Days, Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, discussing the idea or the reality that Florida State and Clemson are in early preliminary talks with the Big 12. Now, this could be just a fact-finding mission by those two programs who have sued the ACC in their media rights issues as that media rights deal goes through 2034. Gosh, man, in the current age of media rights packages, that thing is an anchor weighing down the ACC, dragging it into the Atlantic Ocean. So Florida State, Clemson, in these preliminary discussions about potentially joining the Big 12, I think so many things would have to happen, and probably it's not a possibility right now for any of that to happen. But man, I think it would be a big, big mistake for Florida State and Clemson to settle on a move to the Big 12.
Yeah, that to me feels like a very bad move or decision for them. Because look, they may not be quote unquote blue blood status, but they're still premier programs, right? I mean, Bobby Bowden had a massive run with Florida State and really put them on the map throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, right? You know, Jimbo Fisher went in there and almost ruined it, but, you know, they're back on it with Mike Norvell. And then adding on top of that, Clemson with Dabo Swinney coming in there and really reviving that program. You know, shout out to Brent Venables providing him the defense that he needs to get it done. But you can probably get a negotiation going with the Big Ten or the SEC, right? Both of those conferences would gladly take one of the two of you, if not both. The question is, which one do you prefer? Full-fledged academics where you really want to focus on that, or are you going to go where the football is going to be amazing? It's just up to you. And you can't go wrong either direction, right? And I sense that if anything, this is a fact-finding piece. It doesn't feel like it would be real. I don't sense that you would see either one of those two go to the Big 12 because it just doesn't make any sense, right? Now, granted, they go to the Big 12. I mean, I can see the ACC trying to poach some Big 12 teams back, you know, trading Florida State and Clemson for like UCF and West Virginia. Why? Because it puts them right there still on that coast where they don't have to come up with ridiculous travel. Or, hey, Texas A&M is kind of putting themselves out there saying, hey, we hate that Texas is here. We need a new home. Take us, please. So I could totally see like the Big Ten even going after them at some point so they can get access to Texas, which personally, Texas A&M goes to the Big Ten. That helps Nebraska a lot more than it helps Texas A&M. We'll talk about that another time. I think it's fascinating, though, that with all the conference realignment, I'm curious. How many years do you think it's going to take for us to get to this new mega minor league football league that's going to exist, the Super League? How many years do you think we got left if once Florida State and Clemson gets out of this TV deal?
Man, if the Big Ten and the SEC media rights packages are any indication, I think it could happen by the 2032, 2034 range. Because I feel like Big Ten and SEC are kind of doing their rights deals in more 5-year windows. Like they're doing smaller windows, getting the big payouts. I mean, it's good business. It's like what, a good quarterback contract would look like, 4 to 5 years, with the possibility to renegotiate that at year 4 and get that extension going. Well, the SEC and the Big Ten are kind of in similar boats. Like that SEC one, if I'm not mistaken, just runs for about 5 years. And that's going to have everybody renegotiating that deal by the end of the decade. And then you do an extension and you get closer to 2034, which, hey, the closer you get to 2034 for those ACC teams, the more plausible it makes a buyout of your media rights package. Right now, with 10 years left on your media rights deal, it is not feasible for any of those ACC teams to try a buyout of their media rights package. But you get to 2030, and if you're Florida State and you're still locked in 2030, at that point, you might be ready to pay that Jimbo Fisher buyout and just get out of the conference. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see this, 64 or 32 team, or 40 team super league. I don't know where the limit's going to be on that, because you've got 18 in the Big Ten right now. You got 16 in the SEC. And I don't think all of those teams are going to make it to this Super League unless there's some form of relegation involved, which I hope so. I think that would be a really nice wrinkle to college football moving forward. So I think we're still probably 5 to 10 years away from approaching that and really discussing that in earnest. But I do think that it's going to be on the horizon at some point where these big power programs consolidate their power even further. And that's assuming that, hey, you can get along if you're the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12 is not going to put up a big stink, or the ACC, has power and has some cards to play left. We'll see. Personally, though, I would like to keep it where it's at with the 4 power conferences. As much as the Pac-12 leaving kind of created some really intriguing things with the Big Ten, dude, it's kind of a bummer still that the Pac-12 fell apart. And I know people want to lay blame on Oklahoma and Texas. They want to lay blame on the Big Ten, whatever it is. It was Pac-12 leadership that was really short-sighted, that didn't see the writing on the wall and didn't put them in a position to take advantage of a really strong conference with some really big brands. And so
wasn't Oklahoma and Texas going to go to the Pac-12 at one point?
Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and I can't remember if Oklahoma State was a part of that discussion or not. But yes, Oklahoma and Texas Tech were all going to go to the Pac-12. It kind of fell apart at the last hour, but Larry Scott just could not pull it together and could not maximize profit for his schools. And ultimately that led to it all falling apart. Yeah. And the most recent commissioner was kind of the guy that had to bury it. But the lack of leadership and the demise of the Pac-12 started long before him. And so I honestly, as much as we kind of want to dunk on the Big 12 at times, I still like Big 12 football. I know Oklahoma's not in the Big 12, but I'm still going to watch Big 12 football because there's a lot of really fun matchups that are going to have in that conference. I don't want to see the ACC go away. It was a bummer. Like, my grandfather's a Virginia Tech alum. I loved watching Big East football with my grandpa, watching Virginia Tech and Boston College. I still have memories of Boston College's Matt Ryan throwing this wing and a prayer, falling off his back foot from the left side of the field, back across his body to the right corner of the end zone. And as a Hokies fan, just in shock of what happened there and how they beat Mike Vick again, and watching the Vatek and Miami games, those were awesome matchups in the early 2000s. So as much as the ACC really mismanaged again their conference and mismanaged the ability to make big time money off of their big time brands, I don't want to see that conference fall apart either. I would love it if we stuck with this 4 that we're at right now and let the group of 5 plus Oregon State and Washington State, just let's have some status quo. Conference realignment never stops. There's probably going to be some more, but man, I kind of want to just stick with where we're at. But the writing seems to be on the wall with Florida State and Clemson that they are not long for the ACC. And if they're not, man, would I love to see them in the SEC. I would love to see Florida State, Florida, a conference game. Clemson, South Carolina, a conference game. Oklahoma, Clemson, a conference game on the regular. I would love to see that. That would be incredibly fun. Dude, Oklahoma, Florida State, like going down there to Tallahassee, getting the tomahawk chop and the war chant and the Seminole riding in on the horse with the spear. Like that is one of the better entrances and better traditions in college football. And so having that a part of the conference would just make a ton of sense. And hey, bring Virginia Tech along, bring North Carolina and Duke for basketball. If we're going to have this whole conference realignment thing happen, let's just make it happen. Go to the big one. But I kind of want to keep some status quo for a little bit. Last thought on this, Jay.
Yeah, that's the one thing I miss about it, right? Is the status quo piece. And that's the thing that's going to hurt all of realignment. I agree with a lot of people and the pundits on the regionalization that's gone away. Because that was the fun part about college football, right? Is the rivals that's in state that you can talk noise to, even though one is always superior than the other. You're going to start losing a lot of that. But if you go to the Super League, there's a good chance a lot of that starts to come back. So if we just bleed it all in together, we can. And on ACC and their TV deal that's just absurdly ridiculous, ESPN is making money hand over fist off of that, right? That was a great deal for them. Horrible for the schools because the ad money they're making off of those games. I mean, look at it. The NBA literally just announced, last night that they're getting a 11-year, $76 billion TV deal, which is the longest and the largest they've ever done because their last contract was $24 billion over 10 years. Like that's that's 3 times
the number. Raise.
Right? It's a 300% raise. And all you're going to do is see their checks go up. But that's the thing. It's NFL did theirs. They had $100 billion contract over their 10 or 11 years. They recognize the commodity that sports are. And TV networks recognize it too. It's hard to find good reality TV shows or just sitcoms or anything that's really going to get people glued in to watch. People gonna watch sports. That if there's anything that's gonna people watching sports, and because of that, the ACC teams the conference screwed up when they got that deal with ESPN, and so yeah, I anticipate renegotiations on TV deals. Well, I bet you there's already provisions in the Big Ten as well as the SECs that they get certain schools added, that money goes up even more. Which everybody's here for the dollar, baby.
That's right. And it's been that way for quite a while. College football is about that money because sports is about generating ad revenue. That's where we're at in this reality.
Yep.
A former Sooner coming back to Norman. 2 Sooners in College Football 25's Top 100. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. So I mentioned Locked On Cowboys. Those are my guys over there, but I also want to throw a shout out to my guy, Rylan Stiles, the phenomenal Rylan Stiles over at Locked On Thunder, covering all the Oklahoma City Thunder stuff every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Go check it out. If you're a Thunder fan, you're going to love his analysis of the free agent moves that they've made, the draft picks that they've had, and getting that team ready to go contend for another deep run in the NBA playoffs next year. Jeremiah Criddell coming back to Oklahoma as an assistant defensive backs coach. Love this addition. Love that he's going to be working with Jay Valai, who seems to have a rocket strapped to his back right now as Oklahoma's co-defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach. Dude's been recruiting like crazy, but this is a move that comes in the wake of the NCAA changing their rules about how many on-field coaches you're allowed. We discussed it several episodes ago that this is going to allow for Doug Deacon to be on the field and be on the field both with practice and in games, not just be in a quote unquote analyst role. Well, Jeremiah Criddell coming back with an assistant coach title. you get another on-field assistant that's going to be able to have an impact in practices, work with your guys, and then also have an impact in games with communication as Jay Valai potentially takes on more of the kind of co-defensive coordinator aspects of the game.
Yeah, and I like that. I think the thing that jumped out to me the most and what got me excited about this is that we're bringing back all the old players, right? The one thing we really didn't see with the old regime was a lot of the alum really being involved and hands-on. I was looking on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and I saw Caden Woolard's dad was kind of chatting with Gerald McCoy, and Gerald McCoy mentioned that he watched some of his films, says some things he needs to work on, but he's going to come into town and visit with him and kind of walk him through some things. Man, that just warms my heart to see the veterans making their return and wanting to be involved, because now they know that people want them involved, right? Like, this staff wants them there. They want them to be a part of it. I mean, Brent Venables coached majority of them, and so they want to bring those names back and tell them, hey, share some knowledge and teach down to some of the new players, right? You know, these young players, and really help them to develop. That excites me, right? And so with Jeremiah coming back as a coach, I mean, he left to get his opportunity at USF, right? And then he went over to Mississippi State and then just randomly populated back. And it feels like he sees where, because Venables gave him this first opportunity to coach because that's when he medically retired because of his concussions. It shows that kids are gravitating to Venables and they want to come back and learn underneath him to go spread their wings and fly away somewhere bigger. I love that they are willing to accept him back like that, and you're seeing him work camps and all of that. That's the thing that jumped out to me the most. Not only is Jeremiah coming to work here, Coach Criddell's coming back, it's more so that this staff is embracing bringing back the old heads. I just love it.
Yeah, and they really are in a number of ways, and we're kind of running out of time here on Locked On Sooners, but you know, this is a group that Curtis Lofton, I mean, he's not only bringing back former players from Oklahoma, but he's bringing back NFL vets that he played with. I mean, Ben Watson was on campus hanging out, talking to the players just about life and relationships and stuff like that. Like, it's just unique, and it's really cool that they're using their connections. And it's not just, hey, you know, this is going to help build our brand as Oklahoma. No, it's really for the kids, and they're trying to build they're just trying to help build these kids up from kids to men. And that's an awesome sight to see. Final thing we're going to touch on, and we might have to get in on this a little bit more in depth on our next episode, but Billy Bowman, Danny Stutsman in EA Sports College Football's top 100. No surprises. I think if you were going to pick two players, it would be those two anchors of Oklahoma's defense.
Yeah, when I saw that, of course, the game drops next week, and so we're getting all the previews, in which shout out to EA Sports. They actually did something right on this.
Yep.
They did a really good job of pubbing this. Like, every other day or every day in each week, they had something come out, some videos, some details. And so they've done a really good job of keeping the hype going, because now everybody's going to lose their mind on Monday to play this game, right? Especially if you get it early. I hope most of you got it early, because it's going to be what everybody's going to lose their minds on. But Bowman comes in at a rating at 91. Bowman's at 90, and Stutsman comes in at 91. Both of them are men, Stutsman, Bowman, which is, anyway. But looking at their ratings, it kind of shows you the respect that the people that do the ratings for the game have for what Oklahoma has to offer. Now, granted, we got probably the only two we were going to get, because we still have a lot of questions as far as everything else on the team. But once those players are showing out, you'll see them populating this game. And the good thing is EA Sports is going to update ratings throughout the season based upon performances anyway. But we knew that this was going to be the two. If anybody was going to be on there, it's going to be this two. And I expect them to really show out every time someone leverages Oklahoma in their dynasty. Bowman needs to have at least 3 interceptions returned for a touchdown, just to make it true to life.
Yeah, just make it true to life. And I think a guy like Nick Anderson has a chance to join that group. Deion Burks as well, if they have the seasons that everybody's kind of anticipating. Gavin Sawchuk, maybe a little sleeper choice to join the top 100. Sam Franklin, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of interesting options. I bet there's a lot of Sooners that are going to be kind of in that 85 range, give or take a few points on the overall. So it'll be fascinating to see what the ratings look like for the entire roster whenever it does drop next week. But we'll talk about it. We'll have reactions to the game when it comes out coming up next week on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're tuned in, subscribe to the show. We are your source for Oklahoma Sooners news and analysis here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your local experts for your team every single day. Follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners on Twitter, TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you're looking for it, we're there. Subscribe to the show again, wherever you get your podcasts. Go and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Help other people find the show by leaving us a review as well. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer.
Sooner.